Good evening and welcome to What's Your Story? I'm your host, James Ransom Reed Jr. You know, we cannot recapture our youth, but we can revisit it. I found a place where I could do just that. Remember the days when you had bell-bottom pants, you had a fro or your hair was down halfway through your back? Remember the love beads that you had? Remember when you danced all night and your body didn't hurt for no particular reason? Remember those days? Well, I am going to take you back with my guests tonight to a place where you can step back in a portal of time to a period in your life. That was oh so sweet. My guests tonight are Sue and Bill Ewell. They own the Trading Post in Canton, Connecticut. I had an opportunity to go there, and every time I go, I step back into a sweet period in my life. Welcome to the show, Sue.
Thank you.
Welcome to the show, Bill.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you for coming tonight. Now, first of all, let's start off by telling our viewing audience a little bit about yourself. Bill, why don't you start by talking about who you are, your connection with Connecticut, where you went to school, things like that.
Well, I grew up in Newington as a baby boomer, and with lots of kids, could play outside in the neighborhood, a little different than the way things are now. And went through the Newington schools, and then went to Cushing Academy for high school in Massachusetts, and then came back and worked in Hartford for the Hartford Times.
The Hartford Times.
Yeah.
What famous person was there?
President Kennedy once did a speech on the front steps in the early 60s. The Times actually was a pretty well-known paper, had some interesting writers that were right there, Art Buchwald and a couple of others. Anyway, that was a pretty good paying job for me. I was able to make good money in short hours. It was a bit of a business, selling the papers to the drugstores and grocery stores and the honor boxes on the corner. It was a little bit of a rough street kind of life, but...
Wait a minute, you just said a phrase people may not know, honor box. What is that?
Well, back in the days when people read newspapers, there were the rectangular square boxes on street corners, and you would just put a quarter in, and on your honor, you would take only one paper for the quarter. So it was called an honor box.
Okay.
You could take the whole handful of papers if you wanted to.
Sure.
Which, you know.
Occasionally.
Yeah. But mostly it worked out pretty good, and it allowed me to go to community college and on my own and live on my own. And I was kind of an adventurer too. Did a lot of rock climbing and skiing, and I raced motorcycles for about 5 years. And that worked out great until the Hartford Times went out of business. And, you know, as most of the newspapers slowly have. But it was an afternoon paper, and the afternoon papers were the first to go, unfortunately. So then I worked for UPS for probably 5 years, and then when that didn't work out anymore, it still allowed me to finish college. And I decided I needed a job. And so I started Trading Post books at the time. And over the years, it has gone from, you know, through quite a metamorphosis into what it is today.
Okay. Sue, what about you? What's your story?
I grew up in Farmington, very close to this building here. I graduated from the Shanti Magnet School in Hartford. I have 3 boys, and I didn't finish college.
Where'd you go?
I went to Northwestern Community College in Winstead, and
Okay.
then did a semester at Greater Hartford Community College.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
So you didn't live very far from here?
No, like maybe a quarter of a mile.
Is that right? You grew up as a youngster around here?
Yep. Yep. In the Highlands neighborhood right behind here.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Great place to grow up. Lots of kids, lots of things to do. We had the railroad tracks to play around on, and the Farmington River, and it's a good place to grow up.
You have siblings?
I have an older brother. My oldest brother passed away a couple years ago.
Sorry. What about you, Bill? Siblings?
Yeah, I have two younger sisters. They're both still with us. One lives in Unionville and the other lives in Farmington.
Ah, okay. Now, when I say step back into a portal, into a time in my life that was oh so sweet, tell the audience what a lava lamp is. Tell them. Go ahead, Bill. Tell them what it is.
I think a lot of people know what a lava lamp is, but it's basically a metal base shaped like an hourglass with a glass globe on it with a mixture of, well, they like to keep it a secret, but it's a mix of oil and I think a little vinegar and water, and then wax, a blob of wax. And when you turn the light on down inside the hourglass section, it warms the wax until it creates all these designs.
Trading Post. Your baby, you started it. Talk about your baby, and I know Sue came along, a little later after it started? Mm-hmm. Talk about, excuse me, talk about your baby, the Trading Post.
Well, as I mentioned before, I started as a bookstore. That's
1983.
1983.
Yes.
That's kind of what I always wanted to do, was have a bookstore. And so I started off as a paperback book exchange, which were kind of popular back then. But I soon found out that it was going to be a labor of love and not really a good living. But I stuck with that and then started selling new books, thinking I could build it into a bookstore. I kind of always idolized Huntington's books, a legendary bookstore that's now gone in downtown Hartford. But you know, the books, you know, the margin was low on them and people weren't reading so much anymore. So I started selling music, started selling records and CDs, and then in 1986, CDs came out, so we started selling those, and then pretty soon, you know, because I used to listen to the Dead a lot, I found that there was actually a good market for Grateful Dead stuff. So because I had kind of been on Dead tour for a while, I decided to just start selling Grateful Dead T-shirts and calendars and.
Now, what do you mean you had been on a Dead tour for a while? What does that mean?
Well, we followed the Grateful Dead around from city to city.
We who?
Deadheads.
Deadheads, okay. So how did you get introduced to Mr. Garcia and the Deadheads?
Well, I was riding, they came through Hartford in '73. Well, they came through lots of times, but I remember one time I just cruised down to check it out on my motorcycle. I was riding by, and I just saw a jillion people there, and I stopped and listened, and it was pretty awesome. It was pretty awesome. So I became a fan.
So where did you go with? What kind of travel did you do?
Well, I didn't start doing it then. I was, you know, I kind of was, you know, involved in what I was doing, community college and the Times and UPS. But then once Trading Post got going, you know, 10, 15 years later,
yeah,
was when I started thinking, you know, I could do this and sell the T-shirts on tour. So I had an old camper and used to load it up with blankets and Baja shirts and, you know, whatever would sell, cases of beer. And we'd go out on tour and from, you know, Pittsburgh and Washington, D.C. and Boston and everywhere, all the way out to Alpine Valley in Wisconsin, and just sell stuff. And it was kind of an interesting life, a lot of stories, but it was a lot of work too. But also generated some income that helped me grow the business, because the business was actually struggling. I wasn't really making any money. I was sleeping in my sister's living room in New Britain for about 3 years. And so doing that for about 10 years kind of put me over the hump, so to speak. And by the mid-'90s, we had a pretty good business going, pretty banging business.
So I understand that you share something in common with Mr. Garcia. What is that?
Well, we have the same birthday of August 1st. He's just 10 years older than me.
Did you ever meet him?
No. No, I never met any of the dead guys. Saw them go by on the bus a couple times on their way in, but I know a lot of people who have met them. But
Sue, how do you guys meet? What's the story? How did you meet a deadhead?
I had moved back into the area, and my friend's niece was working for Billy. And she said to me one day, she said, "You should meet my boss. I think you guys would really get along." And I wasn't interested. I had never met Bill before, didn't even know anything about the store, but this young gal worked on me for a year, and I finally said, okay. So she and another coworker set it up, and it wasn't a blind date. It was, a group of us that got together at a local bar, and he captivated
in
me.
Margaritaville and Canton.
Margaritaville. Hey, come on, that would work, wouldn't it? Wasting away in Margaritaville.
And that was almost 31 years ago.
31 years ago.
Almost, yeah. In March, it'll be 31 years.
Mark, well, congratulations, you guys. Wow. So tell me a good memory of, or some of the stories about the Trading Post and its business and Bill's involvement and the people you've met over the years. Tell our viewing audience about something that struck you that you always remember and as fun or fascinating or what have you.
We have always had a really good crew of workers, employees at the
Yes.
Post, and there's many that have stayed for at least 10 years or more. We have a gentleman that works for us now that's been with us for nearly 22 years, I think.
Really?
Yeah. So,
You want to give him a shout out? You can.
hey, Greg, thank you.
There you go. All right.
Greg is awesome. So I think that's one part of the business that I've always admired. You know, I think it says something about Billy's leadership, that we've had people stay for so long. He's an incredible boss.
Yeah, too easy on them.
You too easy on them, Bill?
That's why they stay, so they don't have to go out and get a real job.
They're to go out and get a real job. Yeah. Talk to me about some of the items available in your store that sends people back to a different time and space. What would that be? First of all, vinyl, right?
Yeah.
What happened, remember when CDs came in, as you said, and we were told that vinyl were dead. Get rid of all of your vinyls, right? Well, I'm glad I didn't get rid of my vinyls because I'm going into stores now and I'm seeing vinyls for sale that I bought years ago. That is 3 times the price, as a matter of fact, right now. So talk to me about some of the items in the Trading Post.
Well, when we started with the CDs in '86, it seemed like that was going to be the death knell for vinyl.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
And in actuality, Jim, it was. The vinyl did disappear, and it became all CDs. And there was a period of time when you couldn't give the records away anymore, and I actually cleared them out. And for probably about maybe a 5-year period, we didn't sell records anymore because there was no market for them.
Yeah.
So we just sold the CDs. And then somehow the X generation started getting interested in this nostalgic things.
Nostalgia.
From the old days. You know, maybe they idolized us baby boomers or something.
Yeah, there we go. It's nice to be idolized. Yeah.
Anyway, so people started playing records again. And the next thing you knew, I was back in the record business. And so we've been selling records again for at least 15 years or so. Because they've been back for a while. People will say, oh yeah, vinyl's coming back, vinyl's coming back. But no, actually it's been back for a while.
Yeah.
And now the new generation now, after the X kids are also, it's getting passed along. Everybody wants to listen to the vinyl. And so that's why they're manufacturing new vinyl, but not new CDs so much anymore. But the new vinyl is different. It's made from the remastered tapes. So it's the digital version getting put onto the vinyl. If you really want to hear how the music sounded when we were kids, you got to buy the original old ones. And then you can hear their imperfections, which is, I guess, part of the endearing part of playing a record. You know, you have to, the fun part of playing a record is it needs you. You know, you have to put it on the turntable, and you have to put the needle on just so, and then you watch it, you get to see it, you know. And I like CDs, but you don't get to watch them, and it's all automatic. And then you have to, when one side's done, you're not finished. It needs you to pick it up and flip it over and put the needle on. And the occasional skip requires you to help it along, so you become involved in playing the music. I think that's what people like.
What kind of music can I find in your store? What's the genre? Do you have across the board, or what do you have? What do you got there? Well, wait a minute. Let's let Sue talk about that. Sue, what's there? What can the Jocko find?
A little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything.
We have a classical section.
Classical?
Country.
On vinyl, classical?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Jazz.
Jazz.
Quite a bit of jazz. Lots of rock and roll, of course.
Lots of rock and roll.
We have some comedy on vinyl. We have world music. Just about everything. So I think we have hip hop. I don't think that there's anything left out.
So how far back could I come in the store and buy a record, say, or buy some from the 1940s? You'd have artists that far back, or?
A couple, but most of those were 78s and.
Okay, so most of
we
the.
don't do the 78s.
You know, yeah, remember the 78s spinning at 500 miles an hour?
Mm-hmm.
You dropped the record with 80 million pieces? Yeah. Yeah, so, okay, so we know that you've got vinyl, and we know that you've got a cross-section of music. You got tie-dye shirts, too, don't you?
Yeah, we have a lot of, you know, it's not just a music store.
That's what I want you to talk about. It's
Yeah.
not just a music store.
Yeah. Well, we sell, you know, we sell a ton of dead stuff. You know, like I was.
Really, still?
Yeah. A lot of shirts, a lot of stickers, and you know, all the stuff that was always popular amongst deadheads is still popular. And
Well, wait a minute. The generation got to be a little older now, aren't they?
yeah, there's a lot of old guys like me that come in, and we swap stories of selling grilled cheese and PB&J on Dead Tour, and all the getting caught in the rainstorms and everything else.
Yeah,
breaking
yeah.
down on the highway.
Yeah.
But there's deadheads. If you go to see the dead, you'll find it's just not old goats like me. It's kids, younger kids, and actually, it's a lot of the parents who are trying to get the kids to be into the dead. A lot of them are failing, but a lot of them are successful, you know, so there's young kids into the dead. It's kind of a whole new generation.
I saw jewelry too, classic kinds of rings and necklaces and that sort of thing. Where did that come from?
Well, in the in the late 80s, a friend of mine from Cushing that I'm still friends with married a girl from the Philippines. And so one summer he invited me to come to the Philippines and visit. And I saw, you know, from having been to the trade, back in the old days when there's no internet, you went to trade shows to find sources and products to sell. So I used to go to New York to the trade shows all the time. Well, I went to the Philippines and I saw all this stuff that was at the trade shows, but pretty cheap. And I was thinking, you know, I should try doing this. Just buy it and bring it back. And while I never actually went back to the Philippines again, it did break the ice for me of traveling in Asia. So then I started traveling to Bali and then Thailand and Nepal and India. And I found ways to buy things and have things made and ship them back. So the jewelry is primarily from Thailand. And then I just started selling clothes and jackets. And so now to this day, I still have a lot of clothing made and shipped, particularly from Nepal.
Now describe that location. We'll get to the other one, but the one in Canton, the trading post, it's 2 floors of
Yeah.
I've never even been upstairs.
Yeah, upstairs is a lot of posters, tapestries, ladies' clothing, and
What kind of
and
posters?
accessories, band posters, dead posters.
Really?
Actress, you know, Clint Eastwood, John Wayne, Marilyn Monroe.
Really?
Psychedelic stuff.
So if you're looking for posters to frame and put in your music room, you can find it upstairs.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, I know you've been to the Big E.
Yeah.
How many years have you gone to the Big E?
You mean that we set up?
Yeah, that you set up at the Big E,
Yeah.
yes.
Well, it was about our 20th year or so this year.
Yes.
And that store is Eastern Accents.
Okay.
That we set up there. It's our other store in New Hartford. And those are the products that we get in Asia. It's primarily the stuff from Thailand and Nepal and so
Wood
forth.
carvings.
Yeah, wood carvings, clothing, a lot of
Furniture
jackets.
items.
And
Have you done any of the traveling?
Several times,
Where
yeah.
did you go that left an impression upon you?
Thailand and Bali.
Why?
It's such a rich culture. The people are so friendly. We traveled with our youngest son on the tours that I went, and they worship children, so it was a really friendly environment to be in. And the food is phenomenal. So it's just, they're beautiful countries.
And you have the other location is Eastern Accents.
Yeah.
That's further up 44.
Yes, in New Hartford.
In New Hartford, okay. I have not had the chance to step back in history there, but I did see some of the carpeting and things that you had at the Big E, clothing and stuff up there. So that stuff came from your travels around the world, really?
Yes.
Wow. So do you still travel around the world, Bill? or
well, you know, with COVID times, no.
No.
But I can still have things made. But it's just been a little bit more difficult because Nepal, you know, as of this tape, there's been 4 lockdowns in each Nepal and Thailand.
Oh boy, yeah.
Because, you know, there's 8-10 people living in a household.
Yeah, sure, sure.
The vaccines have been not as readily available
Yeah.
for a while.
Yeah.
And so it's been harder to have product made, and those people are kind of suffering
Sure.
because of it, because they rely on having people, you know, order the clothes to be made, and on tourism. They're suffering because they're not getting the tourism. So
Yeah.
the orders that I give them are pretty welcome.
Yeah. So how long is the trading post going to go on, Bill?
Well, I don't know. I'm collecting Social Security, and according to my tax return, I'm retired. So. I don't know. The business kind of owns me,
Yeah.
and people rely on me right now. But, you know, I've always liked adventure, and remaining in business is an adventure.
I can imagine it is.
It's hard, so
Yeah.
it's become my adventure, kind of working 24/7. Not a complaint. I wouldn't mind having time to do some other things. but
Sure.
At least this, what I'm doing, is something that I really like to do.
You love, yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me something. You didn't say exactly where the locations are. The trading post is located where?
We're right on Route 44 in Canton, right in the main business area of Route 44. And then Eastern Accents is in the Pine Meadow area of New Hartford, also on Route 44. Pine Meadows, you know, Connecticut's full of these areas that aren't really towns, it's just
Yeah.
a place. So,
Is there a phone number people can call?
sure. In Canton, it's 860-693-4679. And New Hartford would be 860-379-1363.
Well, thank you, Sue. Thank you,
Thank you,
Bill.
Jim.
I hope you agreed with me that quite a journey can be had if you go to the Trading Post or Eastern Accents. Step back in time. As I said at the beginning of the show, you can't recapture your youth, but we can revisit it. That's all for tonight. I'm James Ransom Reed Jr., your host of What's Your Story? Everybody has a story. What's yours? Until next time, good night.